So can we start now?
Yes,
Awesome. All right. Yeah, so I'm sharing my screen. Okay. One second. Able to see my screen?
yes,
I believe you are able to see my the presentation popped up, right?
yes, it's fine.
Okay. Fine. Perfect. Awesome. So all right. So, first, thank you for giving me an opportunity for the Uttar Pradesh Power BI Club. So it's definitely a privilege to talk about and share some knowledge on what's happening around the world on the information technology. And to give a background, about myself. So today I'm gonna be talking more about on. So you're able to see the slide 3. I just wanted to be sure that
Yes,
Oh, all right. So today, I'll be talking more on disaster recovery, what exactly disaster recovery means, and why it is important for any of the organization. And I'll be happy to take any questions if there are anything coming out, and I'll be talking in depth on how organizations should look at their availability of the critical data systems and so forth. So just a quick background about myself. I'm Vamshita Reddy, and I have completed my master's from Madras University way back in 2003. And after that, I had an opportunity to work with multiple companies all around the world, and have been working with Fortune 500 companies in the past. So this is just a glimpse of where exactly and how I look like, and this is my LinkedIn profile. If someone wants to, connect and want to share more about what their questions or concerns are, I'm happy to help out. All right. So I do have around 20 plus years of experience into the information technology. I started my career in an IT sector wherein I have been heavily involved on infrastructure. When I say IT infrastructure, um, you know, let me put in a layman language. So, for example, if you are accessing, say, for example, any famous bank, I don't want to quote it, like for example, an ICICI bank, right? So whatever the transactions you do, whatever the way you communicate and interact with those applications, they reside in on the servers, and those servers reside in the data centers. So way back 20 years back, cloud was not at all in the picture, and all these the big size servers used to reside are currently in the current market also it's the same thing, right? So these systems reside in the data centers, and these data centers host the critical environment. And I'll be talking about why these critical environments are, because say for example, right, if you have all systems in one place, if something happens to the system, how are you going to ensure that you have all the data in other systems? So to be very fair, to be very precise, that's what the data center is. I'm running all my critical workloads in one place. What happens if something happens to this, and how well I should be prepared? I means the company should be prepared, right? So that's how it works up. I'll be touching in multiple areas like the disaster recovery challenge, what would be the approach, and so forth. Any questions or anything coming up? Because unfortunately I cannot see the uh, team who are been there. But if anything is there, Naila, please help me out. Okay.
yes, sure. We will cover the questions after the session.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I've been talking about, right, what exactly the data disaster recovery challenge. So I have been, as I said, I do not wanted to quote the names of the companies, but the companies which I served in the past, all the critical workloads has been residing in the data centers, right? So, that there would be thousands of servers, and think of it, right? The Azure cloud or GCP and all, they are all pretty much the data centers, because all the servers are the applications which are hosted in the critical environment, network hardware gear, they are residing in one of the data center. and that's clubbed as a cloud like Azure or AWS or GCP. Similarly, the companies will have their own server and network gear hosted in some of the colo locations. That's called the data center. So now, what's the challenge as of today? Everyone wants to provide their scalable applications, always available applications to the user. But what happens is when they have any scenarios, for example, if a company called an ABC, who is serving millions of users, and they are like a multi-million dollar company, if they are running all the applications in one area, I'm just quoting an example, like maybe in Chennai in India, right? If there is a disaster, maybe if you remember, like five years back, there were like a floods coming up, there was a tsunami 10 years back hit. So if such a major disaster activity happens, maybe it is a by nature disaster recoveries, or by any unconditional disaster events wherein the entire building has been down, the power has gone, or there might be a scenarios, these days there has been security has been the primary concern. And the issues what we have been seeing growing in the market is the security and the security related incidents, like hacking sort of things are also coming into picture, right? So these are the challenges every company should consider and should have a disaster recovery put in place. So what does it mean is, if something happens to my primary, all my applications which are serving my business should be up and running in a secondary data center. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about. And since some of the companies are not paying focus when they get into the real-time challenges, they're always missing the RTOs, right? So recovery time isn't RTO is nothing but a recovery time objective. So when you have an incident, you have to recover your applications in a particular point of time, right? If not, the users or the consumers are going to have a bigger impact, and it's going to impact the company. So I'll be talking more about the risk reduction, and also what I have done in the past in my previous companies, wherein it helped to reduce this recovery time objective, recovery point of objective, to to suffice their business, provide the consumers with the right support services and all. All right. So what I have called about the challenges, right? So, when your critical workloads are not available, your primary applications are not available, you need to bring them up in another location, right? So it's not an easy one, in order to trigger a disaster recovery and plan for bringing up the applications, testing them, and giving it to the customer, or the end users, I can say, is a very, very tedious effort. And it has lot of prerequisites, and also the underlying environment should be ready in other location, so that you eventually bring those environment up, and have the applications being available to the users. Maybe the data applications who are using the Microsoft Azure centric related data fabric related ones, or there it might be an ERP application, or it might be any web applications, or what so forth. So, in order to achieve this, the way it has been implemented is called as a single click failover disaster recovery. So what does it does is, if your primary application is unavailable due to whatever unforeseen reasons, you have an ability to bring it back in any other environment. So be it in from an on-prem environment to Azure, maybe it from or a GCP or any hyperscale provider, or it might be from one location with an on-prem, wherein the customer may have a location A and he can bring up the application in the location B, and so forth. So in order to do that, there are multiple ways to do it. That's called as a secure isolation framework and automated testing. So I wanted to keep it at a very high level, because the people who come in new and trying to understand what a data center is, what a data disaster recovery is, I'm not getting in depth into it, but just think of it, right? Do not put all eggs in one basket is the policy for the disaster recovery. You got to redistribute them, and you have to high availability and say um, elasticity, wherein if something goes on in one location, you should be able to spin it up. So in order to achieve this, even though it says a one-click disaster, one-click failover, it has a lot of backend, implementation or tools or processes or replication models which has been used. So there has been an in-house scripts which we developed to trigger this, because every organization has its own internal data replications to follow, and they use different OEMs. There are proven industry leaders in the market who does the replication or orchestration. Maybe if you just Google it, you get like a 10 of top 10 tools available. So I'm not here to advertise or call out any specific technology we used, but this is what we used. So secure isolation framework, and again, I said we had to be prepared with what data we have and how we securely save it, right? Just think of it. Everyone uses their phones, and everything is there in your mobile phone. So what you do, you do a data backup, and a backup of those your mobile phones or laptops or whatnot, right? Similarly, every organization has to focus on that. So these backups will be used as in when you need to retrieve them as per need basis. And also the secure isolation is nothing but, so when you have a backup, what you do, when you take a backup of your mobile phone, you might be putting in a USB and all, you'll be putting in a secure location. Just consider about it. So anything which has been backed up, and we keep it in a secure location, and how you provide all the security measures in it to not to intervene in it, or not to not to play around with the backup, is very critical. That's what the secure isolation come into. And there are several methodologies available in the market, right? You can have a network isolation, you can have a security centric isolation with the role based authentication measures, and you have the data wherein only specific team or authorized personnel can access the data with a defined processing mechanism. Not everyone can go and access. So that's called as a kind of secure isolation. And the way this single failover has been defined is, it's not that you are going to do in a real time, but the best methodology or the process as per the compliance guidelines is, wherever you go to the SOX controls and, servers and anything, disaster recovery testing is a key control, which means even though you think that you are well prepared, but you need to execute them. That's called as a tabletop exercises or the disaster recovery exercises which the companies has to perform. This also helps, the feature what has been deployed in my earlier organization. They were able to achieve this, to test the controls. Hey, if I'm using an application A, let me go ahead and trigger a disaster request for that. So application will be brought down in the primary, and then on the secondary disaster recovery data center, the application will be brought up seamlessly. All the access provisions will be provisioned. The IPs will be changed. Network segmentation will be done. All this done through these developed via tools orchestration, whatever talked about. And this helps to prepare, because always you need to test yourself to prepare for the worst. That's what it is. All right, I'll take so when I talked about, disaster recovery, right? Because primary to secondary, you have to keep replicating the data. The data should be replicated from primary to secondary, or from on-prem to cloud, or vice versa, right? When we do this, the immutable air gap replication compared to traditional DR models has been very well. The technologies has been advanced a lot. Nowadays, whenever you are replicating anything, this data is being replicated from one place to another, is completely controlled by encryption and other critical methodologies. That's what it talks about. So, okay, so every organization goes with the disaster recovery requirements, and any organization, in order to meet the compliance records, they have to follow this. And when we talk about the immutable, and the air gap, right? So when you have the backups replicating from to different location, they are warm, right? Which means write once and read many. So, as I was saying to you, in the earlier conversation, right? So we cannot alter or we cannot change the data backed up to be in terms of the security and other related ones, right? That comes into the immutable storage and air gap protection. And again, when these replicated, that might be an active passive or active active, or based on preferences of the technology and the business unit. You have to define all those processes and methodologies, and based on that, these rules will be put in place. So, 1 second. Yeah, operational automation benefits, right? So earlier everything was kind of a manual processes, but now everyone is aware of the chat gpt, AI, artificial intelligence and all, right? So I personally do not see any sort of a difference between AI and just an automation. In the past, whatever the activity we used to do, we used to automate it, right? That's what, with much more wrapped up automated intelligence and all, that's what an AI is. But the automation, anything which is manually done can be automated in the technology. That's what it talks about, the automation benefits. And with the one click, we were able to achieve, not only achieve the continuous testing as in when required in the past in my organization, earlier organization, and also we are able to achieve all the compliance needs and validations and all. So which I talked about, right? So any company has to perform the disaster recovery testing and showcase the results, how it is and all. And this particular involvement, if you do a manual disaster recovery testing, you need to bring in a large teams. You need, I mean, once the disaster recovery testing had been triggered, you need to bring in the network team, security team, firewall team, application teams, infrastructure, many more teams are there. But this gives an ability to orchestrate all those prerequisites from all the layers, yeah, of, everyone knows, right? The 7 layers of technology, physical layer, data layer, network layer, and also these orchestration scripts will do that exercise and ensure the infrastructure layer is ready and the application is ready and the application is brought up. So that's what it works up. I just wanted to check the time. I know within 20 minutes I was able to cover a lot of information. So real world, the logistics services company which I have been talking about, right? So the recovery time objective, whenever the disaster recovery was performed, so bringing up all the teams. I added it. Sorry, this is what an AI is. So um, when we were trying to do the disaster recovery testing, right? So when we bring in everyone and start that exercise, it used to take around 42 hours of time. So which is, you invoke the disaster recovery or disaster recovery testing, you start breaking up the replication from the primary to secondary, you start working on identifying the systems, bringing up the infrastructure layer, application layer, and so forth. So when the recovery time objective, which is RTO, has been done, it used to take 42 hours. So now all these processes which has been done by each team at each application layer or each task level, they have been all clubbed into the one-click DR policy, right? That where the orchestration comes into place. So this, it has drastically reduced. So 80% reduction DR time is what has been called out, but we have achieved much more. But always depends on what the application is, right? Some of the applications may need additional functionality testing and all, which would require additional time. But if some applications which are straightforward, easy to use, easy to consume for the end user, they were brought up in a much less time. And also this has been used across the platform because at the point of time we have been using multi-cloud methodology. So this was across the Microsoft, and we also have the GCP at the point of time. And so results achieved. The biggest benefit is, since you have everything on one single pane of glass, you just select what application you need, just create, trigger that disaster recovery. Applications will be brought down, and the beauty of that the tool what was developed was it was also giving you specific tasks along with the logging information. Like for example, you need to add any DNS entries, right? If entry is failing, it will let you know then and there, so the respective team can work on identifying and fixing that problem. So that level of precise information was being showcased, and every team who has been as a standby knows what's happening when we're triggering a TR, and they are aware of it. And also even the logging information helped us to improve over it, because this tool is not something which was developed in a day. It really took at least 2.5 years of time to bring up everything into one single pane of glass, implement all the automated scripts in place, because this is not a single script which will work for all, right? So we have to use OEM centric specific command lines for networking. For application, we use specific sort of Python scripts we use. So there are multiple methodologies being involved and made it as a single pane of glass. And also the way the tool was developed was, when the application was brought up, it also talks about, hey, how much time it took for bringing up the application, what is the data in the source, what is the recovery point objective, right? That's called as a recovery point objective, is mainly for the data. What is the data a company is able to sustain, right? So that's the recovery point of data by using a compliance check when application A was not available in primary disaster recovery data center. What is the point in time? So that information was also being provided. So that helps for all the auditing purposes. And if any documentation related things were also available at one logging information page again. And so by this, not only the company was able to achieve the faster disaster recovery testings, but also the mainly the reporting and the recovery and the confidence. Right, end of the day, everyone needs the confidence. Okay, if something happens, I have a standby options, and that will work. That's the confidence brought into the team and to the business, which was very critical for any of the organization. All right. I would love to have me stopped if there are any questions, but happy to go for this. So compliance to policy, right? So as we said, the compliance rules are very critical in when it comes for the data. So when you are using your data and using for across the multiple hybrid environments, if they are critical, if they are bound to be any critical applications, because for example, if it's a healthcare sector, right? HIPAA is a mandatory, right? So HIPAA has its own set of policies which needs to be deployed through. So during the disaster recovery, so we also implemented the policy as a core process. So which means, so and other tampering is also being created, because end of the day, security and compliance is the key fundamental thing which every company has to go with and has to abide with. And disaster recovery plays a very, very vital role. Even though you are running your critical workloads in on-prem, hybrid, multi-cloud, it does not care. But if you are serving any of the data which is related to the GDPR related, HIPAA compliant, or any other PCI, there's a confidential information, personal information, they have to follow the processes and compliance rules. And this can be achieved the well you manage your policies. And policy as a code is the best in class mechanism wherein you can pull up the data and have the data ready. Okay, nothing but it's just logging informations. If you wanted to have, okay, I have an application, ABC application, I wanted to see who and all are the critical administrator of the application. What you do, you just fire a command which pulls up the who are all having the administrative access. That's a complaints data, and this can be achieved by logging mechanism by using this policy as a code. What you do, you just trigger, have this set of policies or actions triggered through the policy so that we capture all those information. All right. And so this one, building a resilient policy-driven disaster recovery. Again, I said, right, disaster recovery comes in the way you organize, the way you plan, the way you architecture, the way you orchestrate, and the way you test and capture the logging. So it has a different levels of a series of methodologies or patterns you need to follow. So cloud native patterns. So these days, the technology is evolving on a day-to-day basis. For example, the cloud native. Let's talk about the Microsoft Fabric, right? So Microsoft Fabric. Today's world, everything works on data. Data is being adding up heavily. Data needs to be available in terms of pulling the in any information. So data plays a vital role. So when you have such sort of requirements, when your data is being used all across, your infrastructure should be planned in a way that at a hybrid environments, your data is always available, right? So if something happens to the particular data and data platform, then it should be available in other areas. That's where in the disaster recovery and high availability comes into picture. And containerization is one of the best in class. This has, definitely taking a higher precedence these days because it comes with availability zones. You have an ability to, if a person is, trying to access from southern part of Asia, he'll get the same data and availability with the person compared to the let temperature. So that's how it works with. And implement zero principle. So again, security is the basic fundamental thing, and zero trust is always been carried out, and this has been evolving all across the industry. And enable cross-site resilience. Again, it depends upon, as I said, you wanted to have the data all across the regions and have the availability, but obviously when you are demanding more, when you need more, it also comes with cost. So you need to be very cost conscious in setting up these platforms as needed based on the business case and all. But again, if anything related to the disaster recovery, the approach is simple. What is my critical applications? Where are they running? What are they being compliant to? Are they being compliant of any of the industry mandatory or in-country data rules? How are we gonna manage it? What happens to there? And plan for it. So this is how the disaster recovery should be well orchestrated, well planned, based on the BCP plans of the business, and try to enable with the technology. So this has been accomplished in my earlier organization. All right. So um, I would be very happy since I started my career in information technology related to the servers, infrastructure, network, and other critical areas of security. So I'm really, really happy to help out or share the knowledge to to see how better they can learn and how better they can implement and how better they can do for themselves, their career perspective, and their for the company and all. So this puts me with my end of my presentation. I think I got like 1 hour of time, but yeah, what do you want to take it?
Yes, we have one question. I would
Yeah.
like to invite Abhishek Sena on the stage if possible. He can join us. Otherwise, I can read it out.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Oh, so, okay. So I got the question. Or do we require to switch off all the components? Okay. So it's a great question, Abhishek. So think of it, right? So your question talks about you have an active node. So high availability, the active is nothing but a high availability concept, right? So if you are running a high availability in the data centers itself, that's a one approach. Node one, node two, active, right? That's a one approach to have it. And all the critical applications do follow that mechanism of clustering. Okay. So at the same time, if you wanted to have an active from one of the data center, maybe in New York, and the other data center in Washington DC, you can still have that active application, but it has a lot of dependency on the network bandwidth. So if the application is compatible to sustain, because if you try to reach from New York to Washington DC, if you try to do a ping, right, you will get at least 20 to 25 milliseconds, because geographically they are far, and there is a 20 milliseconds of latency. So if the applications are compatible, you can always go with an approach of active. But in the real world, what the companies do is they run all the critical applications on a clustering high availability in the one of the data center, and at the same time they have another data center in an active way, that's called as a hot data center, because this is available, but the sync happens on a real time. If something goes on wrong with this primary data center, all the applications will be available, but this comes with a lot of cost, and many of the companies which run the critical workloads, if they're making high transactional transactions, and it's high revenue generating, they always go for active data centers. And another point is, if it's a cloud, for example, if it's um, um, a- Azure, for example, right? Azure has their bigger presence in East Coast. East Coast, they have the availability centers which in 15 to 40 miles of area, they have their multiple data centers. That's also called as an availability data center. And they have the similarly for Central and West Coast. I know it's a lot of data, Abhishek, but I believe you got the gist of it. And another question what I see is, um, do we require to switch off all components in another site? So the same way, right? If it's an active, if this goes down, automatically all the services will be available here, right? So there is no need for you to switch off. But it all depends on the application. How do you want to do? So for example, if you're running the application in a B area, obviously the data will be accumulated. So if you wanted to bring it back, the cross replication should happen. So it all depends on the application and application way it is put in. All right. So now I'm not able to see the response of Abhishek. Believe he's okay with it, or
Abhishek, is it clear?
okay. All right. So are there any questions which came across? Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, so I just have a few questions as well. Like, I want to know, suppose, like in case of misconfiguration happens in one of the site. So how we would ensure that there would be no any misconfiguration and would be a proper disaster recovery during that time? Yeah.
So that's a great point, right? So
Yeah.
whenever you have an application, so first,
Mm,
whenever you do an application, right? So you do
mm,
clustering. So when you do the clustering,
mm.
you always test how that clustering has been deployed, how it is working or not. That's wherein the testing comes into picture. So
Okay.
never wait for the full-time disaster recovery. So
Mm,
whenever you are disaster recovery testing, take an example of your existing application.
mm.
Presume it's not a real-time DR, but you are testing it. You will bring it down and you will bring it up, right? Another place.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
where that gives an opportunity for you. If something is not working, how you gonna fix it and how you gonna test it. That's where the disaster recovery. So any company, who is following the in-country rules, right? They have to do at
Mm.
least one disaster recovery testing in
Right.
a month, not a full time. But I would encourage that companies, the way they do the maintenance activities every month, right, maybe patching or other maintenance activities, they should have every quarter they should pick one application and test it. Full blown disaster recovery is once in a year, that's a different, but this gives an opportunity to find, because you know what your critical application is, right? So you
Yeah.
should be very confident if any missing configurations are, you should work on it and you should test it and you should fix it. That's how I would recommend, because there might be some project teams, they might have implemented, they're all gone, you don't know what how it works or not. So that disaster recovery testing is very, very critical. And yeah, and the one click what we developed there, right? So
Yeah.
that has an opportunity to select the application and test it. So that's how it is. Yeah.
I just want to know one more thing. Like recently, I had a disaster recovery in my application, so where I
Mhm.
need to trace out each and every event at what time the application have been moved to a different site, and each and every event timings we have to maintain so that there would be a audit purpose. So we need to showcase those document that we have done in the disaster recovery time. So just want to know what exactly that RPO it means. Like RPO is exactly required during the audit time. Audit time they have asked for the RPO details. So just want to know if you can share about the RPO
So
and
I
yeah.
that yeah, I think that's a good. So recovery time objective and recovery point objective, you have two
Yeah.
components, right? So every organization has their own company defined, the business continuity program defines their what it is. It all drills down from the financial side, right? So some of the companies go with an RTO of 8 hours. Recovery time objective is nothing but you bring in all the platform applications ready. That's wherein it is called as an RTO. And RPO, some of the companies have 1 minute, which is recovery point objective is nothing but the data loss can happen only. They have an ability to sustain only 1 minute data loss, not more than that. That's what an
Okay.
RPO is, right? So from 1 minute, from 1 minute, some of them have 1 hour, 2 hours. It all depends on their requirements based on their company, guidelines.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you get, and the other thing is, if the way you replicate from your primary data center to another data center, the way you are transferring the data and the date is available, that gives you a visibility. Okay, my data can sustain 1 minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because the way it's replicated, then only you'll be able to bring it up the data, right? So
Or can't we do a load testing sort of scenarios also can be tested out where we can have a more data being pushed on a different side whenever we just move to a different site. So can we push a more data to check that whether that have a capacity to sustain that amount of data on that particular site? Those sort of testing.
two things, right? One is, if your data is like 10 terabyte here, for
Yeah.
example, so the same 10 terabyte will be replicated over to the other data center. So whatever the growth happens, you should have the underlying infrastructure to take that up, right? That's the
Correct.
one
Yeah.
level. And second level is, when you are copying the data from here to there, when you are moving the data, so you have various methodologies. You have a site recovery manager, you have replication tools available from storage vendors like Pure, NetApp, Hitachi, and other things. So that's called a data move. But whenever you're, and some applications like Oracle RAC Cluster or SQL, they have always on feature. So these replications, whenever they happen, but it all drills down to the distance and the bandwidth of the network. Even though if you're going 10 terabyte, it will not go 10 terabyte, it will not be available in 1 minute,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
The latency plays a vital role. So that's wherein many of the organizations, if your bandwidth, your pipeline, your network uh, is highly capable enough, then you can achieve, to the best of my knowledge, based on my earlier experience, 1 minute is what the RPO can be. But it all depends on, if you do not have specified tools or configurations or technologies available, you will not be able to achieve.
Okay. Just
So
last
you have,
question. Yeah,
yeah.
just last question. Like, just want to know, like, how should we adhere the disaster recovery so that we can be a very much appropriate with the compliance and security point of view?
So yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
So The way, if you are owning your environment, right? So the
Mm,
first thing what you need to do is talk to the security team. There would be a compliance team in your organization, right?
mm,
So talk
mm,
to the compliance team, have them establish the list of applications which are critical in our environment and what
okay.
the business requirements is in terms of RTO and RPO. Then
Mm,
what you do is you do a step two approach of, okay, these are my applications which are running in our environment. These are being configured in high availability. These are being
mm,
configured in the disaster recovery. They are available. This is what it is. And, in order, whether we tested in the past or not, or,
mm,
what?
yeah.
It's a wish list, right? Business may say,
Mm,
I need to have it in 1 hour. But in
mm,
reality, your application is not having a disaster recovery configure. You will not be able
yeah.
to achieve.
Right.
So you have to do the due diligence. You
Mm,
have to capture all the artifacts and then define a process
mm,
whether this application is architecturally good enough to have a disaster recovery or not. You need
mm,
to define that, and
mm,
then you need to come up with, okay, what do I need to do, redesign or re-architecture, or do I need to bump up the capacity in the disaster recovery? So these things you need to plan and execute it, Abhishek. It all depends on application to application, but just think of it. If any critical application is there, you
mm,
have to have the disaster recovery. You have to convince your leadership team to
mm.
invest on it and have that processes in place.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks a lot, sir. Yeah.
No worries. No, no, sir. Yeah, just Vamshi.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Vamsi. Yeah.
no worries. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But try to think of it, Abhishek, the
Yeah.
way we deployed the tool, right? So think
Mm,
of it, try to do more, it's
yeah.
always good, it's a
So,
learning
like, can we bring it in the observability platform also? Like, if we during the disaster recovery, so the data that are being processing from one side to another, so we can trace out through observability platform, from different site when the data been captured or will be stored where in the different site.
So if you are using any of your observability tools in your
Hmm.
environment, whatever
Hmm.
the tools that you are using, right? If you have the proper mechanism of capturing the data, what is running on the source, what is running on the destination, how much the data is transferred, is there
Hmm.
any high bandwidth utilization low? If you're able to capture those, yes, you can continue doing it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
No worries. So that's what, right? So the tool what we deployed, right?
Hmm.
Every step of activities which are being manually executed by the respective teams were automated in that particular one single pane of glass, and everything was maybe for example, stopping the replication. That's the one of the activity,
Hmm.
starting the replication, bringing up the application server, and also those were clearly called out along with start time and end time.
Yeah.
That was helpful in capturing the data for audit purposes.
Audit purpose. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thanks. Thanks, Vamsi. Yeah.
no worries, Abhishek. Great questions. I appreciate the questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So requesting co-host, if you can close my cam.
That's insightful. So I'm facing a little issue in sharing some questions from YouTube in the chat. It would be beneficial if you could just check your WhatsApp I shared there, and it is a server too.
Uh, One second. I'm just checking. Few questions. How does disaster recovery maintain minimal downtime in hybrid environments? Okay. So, okay. So when we talk about one-click disaster recovery, maintain minimal downtime in hybrid environments, right? So in today's world, every organization is a hybrid environment, right? Hybrid environment is nothing but you run some of the workloads in your on-prem and the other workloads in hyperscaler A, hyperscaler B, hyperscaler C, and all, right? So the way you define your disaster recovery or high availability, say for example, if you are running in Azure, if you are enabled your disaster recovery on a GCP, right? If you wanted to move the workloads and all, the way you have configured and established, it would be a much more seamless way. Okay, that's the first thing. However, if you're doing from an on-prem data center to another on-prem data center in the environment, right? So what happens? Even though if you try to trigger the disaster recovery, it all depends upon how your environment is enabled, whether it's a hot enabled, or is it a warm enabled, or is it a cold, which means when you trigger a disaster recovery, you have to bring up all the environment of the disaster recovery, start from the hardware layer, network layer, security layer, application layer, infrastructure layer, and bring up the application. So these layers add up a lot of value. So the tool what has been deployed in the past was the other side was always available, so you can pick and choose. If you go back to my presentation, right, 80 to 85% deduction was there in terms of RTO, because that talks about the RTO. The way you establish your disaster recovery in terms of hard, warm, and cold, your RTO varies, and that's how it relates to the um, maintaining the downtime. So, and again, the downtime, right? So if your primary application is down and if you're trying to bring it up in another location, right? So obviously the application is not available. So the lesser the RTO, the downtime would be that much lesser. The increased RTO, which means the increased downtime. All right, that's the first question, and I believe they are okay with it or not. Nala, I may need your help to check on that first question.
Okay, so we can proceed with the next one, as people are not here with us on computer stage.
Okay, so what is the biggest challenge in implementing the dual layer isolation framework? Okay, it's a great question. So the challenge in implementing the dual layer is, so first of all, whenever we have a disaster recovery plan, right? So it all depends on what is your security requirement, what is your organization's requirement to have it isolated. So some of the companies, what they do is they do an active, or they do an active passive, or they do an active, and the other one is called as a dark data center, which means all the data will be replicated there, no one can see it, no one can access it, it's all secured, and it will be required, they will try to bring it up only in case of requirement. So in order to achieve this, it all gets into the networking configuration layer and the security firewall related configurations which a company can do. For example, if it's an active, obviously the communication has to happen with the both data centers, right? That's the first thing. Step two, active passive, wherein you only replicate the data, and then nothing comes out from here. That's called as an active passive. And active dark is something wherein you just isolate with the security measures in place. Only one-way communication happens, and nothing goes from there. So these are the three strategies the disaster recovery exists, and the complexity comes into place based on the rules configuration, the network and security layer. So obviously, when you have active passive, it's an easy one, but you want to go for the third one, which is the dark data center methodology. It's a very complicated one, and obviously you need to invest on on orchestrating this with the respective secure firewalls what you got in place, and implement it. So the tool which has been deployed, it was only for we have done for active and active passive, but not for the active data centers, dark data centers. I believe this is helpful, but you may need to check. Okay, so what strategies? Well, so when the data is when the data is replicated, right? So we use different tools and technologies. So again, the immutable air gap comes up with, but that if you are using the replications from a storage layer or a network layer, an application layer, it all comes up with what the encryption methodologies or encryption solutions you're using. There are many solutions available in the market as of today, which comes up with immutable air gap backup, wherein you cannot alter, you cannot change anything and all, because they have their the beauty of the applications is the immutability comes along with the package. So it all depends on what application or what software solution you're choosing it in terms of that. And the strategies are used are simple. The more you tighten it in terms of the rules, RBACs, in terms of ensuring that you're controlling your own backups which are replicated, it comes up with. So it's nothing but the hardware hardening policies which are available. You need to implement it. So I can say, and again, authentication is the key thing for any air gap backups to be in a full control. And also, there are techniques which you can isolate the source and data to pass over with only specific ports, specific data, nothing can reach out. So there are multiple layers, multiple wrappers of security which you can implement it besides to the technology. All right, so for the question 5, how does the platform handle multi-cloud DR scenarios with different provided architectures? Okay, so as we said, the tool which has been deployed was purely for the on-prem and on-prem to cloud. So I personally did not got an opportunity to extend it to the multi-cloud, because even if you go for the multi-cloud as of today directly, they themselves got the best-in-class tools. If you wanted to have from Azure to GCP or GCP to AWS, these hyperscalers are providing a well-in-class, fully orchestrated disaster recovery modules. But if you wanted to integrate it, the one-click data center, disaster recovery platform, which was deployed by me, developed by me in the past, would have been a good opportunity. But unfortunately, I could not. But this is just an extension, right? And again, it all depends upon the architecture. For me, if you're running an application, if your underlying security network architecture is very well put in place to have the multi-mobility, multi-compatibility, and moving from one to environment to other seamlessly, it can be easily achieved. I believe I tried to address all the 5 questions, Nila, but if someone is not convinced, if someone needs any additional information, happy to take that.
Yeah, anyone wants to join us live just to give hi or something, we are open to it. Raise your hand. I can invite you to stage.
Any other questions? I know it's a lot of data. Many of you might be digesting how it works, because these days it's all hybrid methodology, right? Hybrid approach. Some of them are running locally, some of them are running in one of the hyperscaler, multiple hyperscalers, SaaS solutions. So a lot of mix into it.
So if no one is interested, then I would like if you could just share one piece of knowledge from your end for us, like something, even it can be like apart from this theme or topic or any just life-giving values or something.
Yeah. So I would the knowledge or the experience which I gained over the years, right? So when you're working for your own product, right, whatever the product is, so you should always think about what happens with this particular application, because this happens in our real time world, right? if i'm having if I'm having something, if I lose my well-being, then what is my standby approach, right? So you should always think about it when you're working for your product in a company. Try to see what happens to this application. Is it highly available? How can I ensure that the application is functioning as required? If something happens, how can I bring this application up and running with a minimal time, so that the business can get this available quickly. So you should always have this approach or mindset to ensure that every critical application have a definitive backups put in place, and if anything fails up, you should have an ability to restore it and bring it back and provide the support to the respective customers. This is very very important, and I would highly recommend whomsoever are listening to this session, go through their infrastructure applications they are running in, how are they being backed up, because disaster recovery is real time, is once in a while, but you have to be very prepared for it. And testing plays a very vital role. The way I have articulated in the tool what has been developed, I would encourage that others also think through that and start putting some efforts, so that you have an ability to have your own mechanism or a strong tool in place to continue with such sort of requirements in the future. Touchwood, I do not want it to have anyone get into the real-time disaster recovery scenario, but it's always good to test it on a periodical basis.
Okay, so one more question is from a personal line. It's like if we are looking into pursuing or starting a very new career to this field, so what should be our way or the strategy to begin learning or studying for this?
Um, Sorry, Naila, it was kind of breaking up. Okay, can you please repeat if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Uh, it's my personal line question. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we are looking to divert our career or start a new beginning into this field, like using Microsoft Fabric and just looking into this domain itself, like looking for security and everything, then what should be our approach or strategy to start learning or begin our way towards this?
So maybe I apologize. It might be internet issue from my side, but I will kind of I lost you for a while. But what I understand is, if you wanted to leverage this, what it would cost, or Mohit, were you able to
Yeah,
get
what
an idea?
should be the approach for
Yeah.
starting a career into this?
So approach is simple, right? So if it's a critical application, you have to have a disaster recovery in place, and what your approach is going to be based on your environment, because it depends on environment to environment. If some of the applications which are not critical, the business mission, we do not want to invest it does not require. But if some applications are really critical, then definitely we should start considering the approaches from the data, the Microsoft Fabric, or other solutions which are available in the market, and try to leverage it. I would strongly encourage that this is the must to have. I believe I answered your question. Regarding the cost, it all depends upon the way it is implemented, Naila. I cannot call out any specific cost, but and even the hyperscalers are having a very well established mechanism to show us what the cost would be. So I don't think so it will be a challenge in knowing what the estimates would be.
Okay, I see that. So if we need to pursue our branches, follow this way, or invest in this, or something that way, so what should be the right approach for doing that?
So right approach, right? So understand your environment is the foremost important aspect. Okay, once you understand your environment, understand your portfolio of the applications, and understand your software technologies which you use, then you should look at your the team skills, whether we got the relevant skills to achieve what the architectural requirements would be in enabling this for a specific set of applications. So once you have all the data, then you should start working on implementing those into reality.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much. So anything if you would like to add for the attendees or YouTube audience or anyone else watching it afterwards, you can add it. And after that, we will close the session.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, industry is trending towards AI, right? So, I mean, I would encourage that every manual task which has been executed, try to think of it, how you can, because I would always encourage that be lazy, be, if you want to be lazy, you will try to find options in automating, right? So try to automate these regular transactional activities and try to put everything in a precise way so that you can be able to achieve well established results. The same with AI, the disaster recovery tool which I'm talking about. It was a painful exercise for me. So I was thinking how better we can automate it, right? How we can bring up everything and try it into one single pane of glass. So this is because of the tedious effort which we've done. We were able to achieve this. So like this in today's world, everything should be automated. If it's a technology, that's what people should learn in more about in the coding, understanding the infra application related coding and all. That's the area which should everyone should focus on. And it's a hybrid cloud environment, so try to be more flexible. It's a SaaS solution or an on-prem or a cloud solution. You have to be you have to learn everything, and you have to be very competent in today's market, right?
Okay. So, any question, Mohit, or should we end? So, yeah, we are good to go now. Thank you so much for
All
joining
right.
us and sharing your slides.
No worries. Thank you so much, Nella, and appreciate your logistics coordinations with me. Thank you, Mohit, and thanks for the opportunity for the UP Microsoft Power BI.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.